Let's do this. Okay, so this is The Ranch, episode 3. It took us a little while to get to episode 3. Just had our yearly break.
I was at the beach.
Holiday break. We're at the beach, soaking up some sun.
Yeah.
Now we're getting back into things. So we're back, me and Cameron, for The Ranch, episode 3, an Oxen podcast. So this week, what are we going to be talking about, Cameron?
Well, Alex, we are going to have insightful and engaging discussion about anonymity online and the ways that there are some people out there who want to take it away and some people who feel very strongly that that would be a bad thing.
Yeah. So I guess the first point to make, right, is, us being two people in their 20s. For the most part, we grew up with the internet, in and around the internet. The internet, when we were kids, wasn't necessarily like as ubiquitous as it is now, but it was always there. It always existed, even if your access was more limited than it was now. It was a part of our childhoods in a lot of ways, right?
I still remember my first internet experience, and it was totally anonymous.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I was like, maybe like 8 years old, and I was like, Mom, I want to go on the internet. I'd heard about like chat rooms, and I was like, I want to go on a chat room. And she was like, no. But I just like kept like, and then eventually she like let me have like supervised time on some random like the first thing that would come up if you Googled chat room, and it was some weird thing called like headbone zone where you and just like I don't know why there's like a picture of like a head with a bone going through it in the thing. It's not as like weird as it sounds, but yeah, and that was very anonymous back then.
Yeah, well, I mean, early on the internet had this layer of anonymity, right? And I don't mean anonymity in terms of like forensically speaking for the internet, like obviously there was still data that was being leaked, you might have had your name attached to your profile, but it wasn't public, when you were in these chat rooms, the idea was people didn't know who you were.
It's a cool username. You would never be like Cameron Lee 1994 is going to be my like.
I remember, back when I was setting up my first email, I had this, and probably a lot of people have the same story, right? Where for years I was carrying around this stupid email until eventually I got to the point where I, needed an email for something important. I had to be like, oh wait, I need to get rid of woolen socks 12345 at hotmail.com.
Mine was Cam is the spiff at hotmail.com. And like it got to the point where you're like applying to jobs and you're like, this can't go on.
It's time to cut the cord. And, get like your name at Gmail or something.
Yeah.
Right? That became the thing. But yeah, I mean, early on, I was the same. I remember when I was really young, I used to go on like internet forums. I liked football at the time. So I went on like football forums and discussed football. And then there were like IRC chats attached to the forum, and you would go on those as well and have like live chat rooms. And no one knew who anybody was. It was just a bunch of strangers talking about a common interest, right?
Yeah.
But that has more or less kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was like your mum's first reaction, right? It's
Yeah.
like, don't go on this chat room. It's like stranger danger. You don't know who's going to be there. They don't know who you are. Like, bad things going to happen. But in reality, I was like on Neopets.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say, if they were doing KYC, I wouldn't have been allowed on Neopets.
Yeah.
So you weren't allowed on the Neo boards unless you were 13. And I was like 11 being like, I want to go chat to my Neo friends. I spent so many joyful hours. If Barnaby had his way, I wouldn't have been allowed on.
Exactly. It was this unique kind of place.
Yeah.
Especially when you're younger, right? Where you can go and kind of like talk about things or explore different concepts that you haven't been able to explore, before. It's a really interesting kind of space.
For sure.
Then, this little website called Facebook came along.
Little one.
You might have heard of it.
Yeah. Little guppy of a website.
Everything kind of got screwed.
Yeah.
At this point, right? Like, you couldn't have Cam is the spiff.
I think it's literally like against it. Like if you,
it is, you get banned. I remember there was this thing that happened when I was maybe in like year 7 or something in high school, where one of my mates made this like joke account on Facebook, and I don't know, it was just like as just weird teenagers do, this strange character that like someone had made up in a comic that they drew in their free time or something instead of doing their homework. And they were like, oh, as like a funny joke, I'm going to like upload the picture that I drew of this character to Facebook and like make them a Facebook account. And she got in a huge amount of trouble. Like that account got banned and her real Facebook account got banned because they were like, you're creating a fake persona on Facebook and this is against our policy. Like you're not allowed to do this. And absolutely, like, completely stamped it out, right? Like, the whole idea
Seems like an overreaction.
Yeah, it does seem like a bit of an overreaction, but that was the policy that they wanted. And I'm pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg, there's this quote that Mark Zuckerberg has that's like, if you want more than one identity, it shows like a complete lack of integrity if you want to have more than one identity. And that mentality completely underpins the way that Facebook operates and handles identity, and they want everything to be real.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything
Well,
to
if they're
reflect
creating like advertising profiles and there's a bunch of people on the
it's this
platform
big incentive,
that
right?
then it's like he's not going to be like, you know what, if you want to create fake people, if you want your dog to have his like Facebook, like it's fine, just do it, because it's skewing their margins if people.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. They've got like a strong incentive to make sure that all the people are real, and you can sell them stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And so in Australia, some very uncool things are being proposed at the moment in terms of anonymity online. This is something that is, it's in our own backyard. So we're very acutely aware of this.
Well, it's this ongoing kind of saga, right, where the proposal is basically to dox everybody.
Yeah. Which is like such just like a out of touch with tech politician concept, and especially
really, the way it feels is literally just like these politicians have these personal gripes with social media and their experience of it, and they're trying to solve that problem for themselves in a solution that they're forcing on everybody.
It's actually like really funny, even though it's also really depressing. Like a lot of the people that are doing it aren't even really trying to like hide the fact that that's what it is. Like,
no,
Barnaby Joyce was literally...
I got bullied.
Yeah, he's like, they were being mean to me and my family on social media, so I want to bring in new legislation that's like to stop people from doing it.
It's a strange idea, right? And I mean, with Barnaby, his argument was, look, I don't care if people are mean about me because I'm a public figure, but it was like my family that's like off limits, But it's really strange that they like extrapolate these issues that they see directly affecting them, and they're like, this is happening to everybody, and the only way that I can empathize with like the wider community that I live in is by personal experiences that I have, but actually silly. By doing that, he's completely misunderstanding the whole issue of anonymity, right? And the effect that you have when you take away anonymity. Because like we were kind of getting at before, right? There are benefits to having anonymity, being anonymous online.
Yeah.
It gives you this freedom to explore things, to discuss things, to think about things that you might not otherwise think about, right?
Yeah.
Or to be yourself when, in other contexts or in other realms, it's not necessarily safe for
it's
you to
about
be
like disinhibition, right? And it's like the issue is sort of like this double-edged sword where when you have anonymity, it does, just being online, speaking online, like it's like they try to say that it is about having anonymity, but whether or not it is, being online, you are disinhibited in what you say. Yeah. And that is a negative thing when you're sort of like abusing someone. But also it's like on the other side of the coin, being less inhibited in what you're saying is actually a really positive thing if you are sort of, if it's something that is positive for you, and if you're part of a marginalized group where maybe you're not free to say certain things and explore certain topics or however that manifests, then in that sense, being disinhibited and being anonymous and being able to have those conversations is actually an extraordinarily positive thing.
Yeah, because they're kind of tapping into what is a real issue, which is, online hate, trolling, online violence, online harm, etc., right?
Yeah.
And they're falsely attributing anonymity as the root cause. And, the fact that people can be anonymous or pseudonymous online, they're like, oh, this is why people are being a-holes.
Yeah.
It's because there's no, consequence for them being an a-hole.
Yeah.
But in reality, like you're saying, it's disinhibition.
Yeah. There was this really funny thing going around on Twitter at the time when this was first blowing up. And it was people were posting all these screenshots of the politicians that were pushing for all this KYC on the internet stuff, and they were just abusing people on Twitter, from their accounts, saying all this really nasty stuff. And it's the problem isn't you need to dox everyone. The problem is that they're just like there isn't accountability.
So this is kind of something that really gets me worked up, right? Is that it feels like the kind of subtext of what they're saying with all these laws and all this policy that they're trying to push, right? Is you can be hateful and harmful and be a bully as long as you put your name next to the fact that you're being bullied, right? And it's like what you do by allowing people to be bullies as long as they have their name next to it is you just reinforce, the power structure that already exists. So the person's already powerful, like a politician, for example, and already in a position where they can, step on somebody else without there really being consequence. Yeah. They're just going to be able to keep doing that.
For sure. Especially in the... Sorry, go on.
You're just completely overlooking the fact that there's this wider culture that's causing these issues that you're not addressing. And they're not unique to online worlds either, or digital spaces, right? They're like societal issues that are manifesting online because that's where 90% of our human interaction occurs now.
Yeah, for sure. And the power balance really comes into play in the way that they're talking about enforcing these laws as well, because it all just kind of comes down to defamation suits as far as I understand.
Yeah.
Which is it just makes me think of what happened with that unemployed, disabled activist guy who got sued by, I think he's was the deputy leader of the Nationals or something, and he just said he called him a rape apologist because of the Christian Porter case and his support of Christian Porter. And then that activist on Twitter, he just said it on Twitter, and then he got sued by this guy, defamation suit, and for tens of thousands of dollars.
So there were a lot of cases that were like this that you saw popping up where people, and there was a few, where there was a particular wave, right, where all of these people out of nowhere were making these really kind of forced apologies, basically. It was they were tweeting out these apologies and these retractions being oh, I said things about somebody, but those things that I said in the past about that person that I will not name now were actually completely incorrect. And it was literally you could see the person off camera holding a gun to their head being apologize. But a lot of the time, it actually ended up being the case that those people obviously been threatened with suits, lawsuits, and they weren't in a position to go and get their own legal advice. They were just okay, I'll just apologize. And what ends up happening is you suppress the truth, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The truth can't get out because the people that would be out there exposing the truth are actually just afraid. And this issue comes not only from whistleblowers, like we've seen in the Australian kind of political landscape, but also journalists have the same issue, right? Where suddenly their ability to report is greatly limited because of these defamation laws, which are extremely restrictive.
Yeah, particularly in Australia, right? There's some pretty, not great. And it seems as though, basically, if you actually listen to anyone who is an academic and who studies this kind of thing, they're no, dude.
Yeah.
Anonymity is good. Anonymity is not a driving force behind abuse and toxic behavior online, and it's just really frustrating that it's become such a scapegoat.
Yeah, it has, and like you said, every single academic is shut up.
Yeah.
You literally don't know what you're talking about. Everybody that we know in the digital rights space is literally shut up.
Yeah.
You are doing so much damage, and the thing that's so frustrating is it feels like they know.
Yeah.
They know that they're doing damage, but this is the scapegoat that they've found, right? That they can use to push a particular narrative to suit their own agenda.
Yeah, for sure.
And all this stuff has come out over the last couple of years. And this is happening all over the place where you realize that if you take away anonymity, it's a lot easier to get away with things because you can very easily target the people who oppose you.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why anonymity is such a valuable tool, right? When you're in conflict, especially in a conflict that the power of the two different parties is very different. If you're just a random person versus, a major politician. Obviously, the power difference between you two is pretty severe. So if the politician has the capacity to target the person and just make them go away,
for sure,
it's very obvious that will happen, and it has a really negative effect on democracy, free speech.
I think what you were saying about how it affects the discourse and suppresses people from because they're concerned about being sued. It's
Yeah.
like it would actually be like a nightmare if the way that they're talking about these laws right now happened tomorrow. It would be like the chilling effect on speech against powerful
Yeah.
organizations and people would be insane.
There's kind of another layer as well, Ryan, because in Australia, this is getting kind of Australia specific at this point, but like, I wouldn't be surprised to see, it used as a testing ground for this kind of legislation and then exported overseas to other places similar. But there is this notion that social media companies or news organizations as well, Ryan, are responsible for the content that's published on them. So
Yeah.
you end up in this situation where
They just turn it
Twitter
off.
is responsible for your tweet. And if
Yeah.
you tweet some libelous, scandalous content, Twitter has to take it down or they're going to get sued.
Yeah.
Likewise, even going beyond that, a news organization could post an article which is 100% truthful, but then, Joe Schlo posts some BS in the comment section and they have to take the whole article down or take
Yeah.
the comment down at least. But it's such a huge threat.
And that's why you see so many comment sections disabled at the moment because, well,
Yeah.
here, I don't know if it's a thing in other places, but they do it here. And it's like there's no discourse around the topic because they just have to close it down.
Yeah,
So-
which completely closes the whole
Yeah.
discussion
For
down.
sure.
There's no room for public discussion. And in a lot of places on the internet, it's been a great place for public discussion to take course.
Yeah.
In
In a broad way, that was like how people sort of saw like what the internet was. Part of what it was, a big part
Yeah.
of what it was at the time, was like this big global town square where you
Yeah.
could have these like that it would like take discourse to a whole new level that it's never been able to be
internet
at.
forums,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Internet forums in their various, myriad forms, whether it's freaking Reddit or like some hyper-specific like pole fishing forum. These are great places for
add me.
discussion to take to take place, and bring people together based on interest. But even recently on Reddit, I've seen threads being shut down, threads being blocked, because of these proposed laws, right? And they won't just affect people in Australia, like in the case of Reddit, right? It might be a Reddit that's about Australia or about Melbourne or wherever. But there are people from elsewhere, that won't visit that, but the content is being restricted or locked, or their capacity to participate in that discussion is restricted because of concerns over these laws.
Yeah.
Right? Concerns over defamation, over getting sued, and in the case of Reddit, it's like there's there's Reddit itself, and then there's the admins or the mods of the specific subreddit, and then there's the commenter. There's like so many layers of threat, right, where people can be targeted and you can shut down a discussion, and it just makes it too easy to suppress that conversation, right? Suppress people's access to information, basically.
For sure.
There's an important point to make as well here, right? Because we've talked a lot about, general discourse, anybody's ability to participate in the discussion, open communication, the town square concept, right? But there's also, and we've kind of skirted around this issue, but there's an issue where the most vulnerable people, the most vulnerable groups are the ones, especially in online places, right, where they're often the targets of hate and online violence, rely on anonymity a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
They need anonymity. There's numerous studies showing that it helps them feel safer. It not only helps them make them feel safer, but helps them be safer when they navigate the internet, when they're navigating digital spaces.
Basically, anyone who knows what they're talking about when they talk about this, that's what they say.
Yeah.
They say this is a massively important tool for vulnerable people, and taking it away just makes them more vulnerable.
Yeah, it makes it possible for them to be targeted by hate groups or by hateful people, by hateful content more easily, and literally just screws them over in every imaginable way, right? And when you realize that the majority of people aren't using anonymity specifically in order to conduct hate, and I mean, you would have seen this, right? You're a social media guy. lot of the time the people, and like you were saying with the politicians before,
Yeah.
that are posting all this malicious content, they're not even anonymous.
I don't care.
It'll be like I'm like Brad Smith, and like this is my family
Yeah.
in my Facebook profile picture, and then
Yeah.
they're commenting
And my
some
truck
like hateful
and my fish
thing.
that I call
Yeah.
my fishing pole for him.
Literally, yeah, like
And he's
everything-
just
find out
like, he'll
everything
just say
about
the
this
worst
person.
thing.
It doesn't stop. And you see this as well when people are getting quote unquote cancelled. It's like they had all this public information about them.
Yeah.
And yet, and this on this public account, public forum, and yet they choose to post this stuff. And even though there are consequences, and the consequences come home to roost, people still do it because it's not them being anonymous or being able to be anonymous that's actually causing them to be like, I hate everything.
Yeah, for sure. It's very similar to the discourse around privacy that you see, and
Yeah.
it's picked up as a scapegoat, despite the fact that it is crucial to a lot of people's safety.
Yeah.
And yeah, what we're seeing at the moment here is kind of reminiscent of what we're seeing in the UK in terms of internet encryption, and the way that like the government is like trying to undermine what is essentially a fundamental right.
Yeah. To suit their own narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're right. In the past, we've seen this kind of stuff pushed through in the name of security, national security, or, you know, anti-crime kind of agendas. And now we're kind of in this place that's like, and I think they've realized and co-opted the fact that people are concerned about online hate, about misinformation and things like that. And they're like, oh, this seems like a good issue to kind of tack onto. And then they're like, hey, everybody, here's the solution. Just make everybody doxxed.
Yeah.
And they're kind of trying to
You need
ride
like an
that,
internet ID.
Yeah, they're kind of trying to ride that wave.
It's linked to everything.
Through.
Yeah.
But it's BS. And we know it's BS. And everybody who knows anything about this topic knows it's BS.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do we
Hashtag
do?
get session.
What do we do?
I didn't have that in my notes.
I haven't thought about that yet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you said, here's one thing you could do is navigate the internet in more anonymous ways when you can, right? Like, opt out of things that want your identity, that require your identity. Things like Facebook, right? Try and use it less, or don't use it at all if you can. Because you create this ecosystem, this expectation that people don't need their identity to be revealed, to be in a certain space unless it's required for some reason, right? And it's not required for people to know your identity, your real life identity, to make a tweet. It's just not necessary.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna stop because there's some sirens, there's some wee-woos going on outside. I don't really remember what I was saying, but Tom can just make like a random cut here. And you can even put this in. Anyway, so, you know, you can use things like session, right, which by design, the whole infrastructure, the protocol, the technology is designed to preserve anonymity. And there is this power that technology has to have rights considered and built into it when you make it, right? Make it so that it's not possible to erode a right like privacy or erode a right like anonymity. And it's simple, and it doesn't leave it up for discussion because it's not up for discussion. It's a right, and you know, we have a right to build these tools as well to protect it. So things like session, I think, are a great tool for fighting against this kind of sentiment. And get out there and, you know, leave a comment. I don't know. That's kind of the end of my thought bubble on that topic. But yeah.
Cool.
Like I was saying, anonymity is a hugely valuable thing. It's a human right. We really should be protecting it as much as we can.
Yeah, anonymity. It's a big one. That's our little view from where we are, our local context, and what we're doing to affect people's access to anonymity online.
And I mean, for people who are watching, I'm really interested to hear what the context is like where you are as well.
Yeah,
you know, like
for
we've
sure.
got a pretty specific
Even just like
West.
cultural attitudes, I'd be very curious to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty much it from the team at Oxen for this week.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Expect another episode in a couple of weeks' time.
Bit of a surprise in the next episode, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's going to be a bunch of extra video content coming out. Just keep an eye out for that. Key's back in town.
Yeah.
So he'll be in the dev update.
It's Keytown.
Yeah. We'll see you all next time.
Adios.